Hello, everyone. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're all staying safe. One day I'm gonna figure out how to talk properly and not stutter in my intro. Today's not that day. Today is a very special video, and I know I say that, I've been saying that lately with all my videos, but today is actually genuinely a special video. Today I'm talking to Ian Sadler. And he was actually if you don't remember, he was actually the podiatrist who fulfilled my challenge that I posted out on the digital talk that I did in January. And basically, the challenge was, what do you like about your profession? Why do you like it? What makes you passionate about going into work every day? And his video was it was actually pretty awesome. And it was really nice to see someone go out of their way to do a challenge and kind of step out of their comfort zone. But turns out Ian is actually a natural at this, which was a little bit unfair to all the people that participated. Just Ian participated, but we won't talk about that. I'm super thrilled that somebody did. So we're not going to focus on the other part. Moving on. So this interview is basically an interview to get to know Ian a lot better, and he's actually given us students a little surprise. So I hope you stick around. I hope you enjoy the video. And thank you for subscribing and watching and liking all my stuff. I really appreciate that. It really helps me out. So please like, comment, share, let me know what you think. Yep. Thank you so much. Bye. Hi, Ian. How are you?
I'm very good. How are you?
I'm great. I just wanted to start this video off by saying thank you for participating in the challenge that I posted out. You did such a great job, and I'm really, really happy you spoke about why you're passionate about it, and what inspired you.
It's very easy to find topics about podiatry that are quite inspirational. Very, very happy to oblige. Do a talking head video for you. Found a struggle to find subtitles, but it still worked.
I think you did great. So how did you come about how did you find podiatry?
So podiatry is my second career. So initially I was a medic with the British Army.
Okay.
So I joined at 19, just turned 19, the Army. Joined as a medic, did the basic training bits, and then worked for about a year and a half as what's called a combat medical technician. So that's essentially not quite a nurse and not quite a paramedic. So the job is to stabilize them at point of wounding and sort of bit paramedic-y sort of stuff. But we don't carry the drugs and things, because you've got to carry it all with you. So we haven't always got an ambulance available. Right. But and a lot of the time you might only have the patient for a few minutes even before they get pushed back up the evacuation chain. But equally, you might have to hold on to the person for 4 or 5 days if there isn't an evacuation chain. So that's where the nursing comes into it and things like that. So it's somewhere between those two roles. And then my regiment got amalgamated with paratroopers. So I ended up being a paratrooper and support medic for that sort of thing. And then I ended up working with this elite and special forces for a year or so as whatever type of medic they needed. So sometimes I'd be a dive medic, sometimes I'd be a helicopter medic, sometimes parachute, sometimes just working in a med center or giving talks, or basically whatever was required. So teaching and training and that sort of thing. So when I decided to get out of the Army, I knew I wanted to be a medical specialist in something. And when I looked around the different things, took an adult careers interview and that type of trying to do a bit of research into it. And podiatry came in after, obviously I got Army first, RAF second. So they were the first three that came out. So after dismissing those, because I qualified for those, I got podiatry was in the top 3 or 4. So physio I didn't do because I didn't have enough A levels for reasons we may talk about later for that. So, but I had some, but not enough. And I did a career placement with each of the other ones. So optometry was one of them. And I didn't fancy that one because it was sitting in a dark room, just going more or less is the white line in line. But the thing that particularly attracted me to podiatry was there was so many specialisms within it. So I wanted to be a specialist, and there were, as it's medicine as it pertains to the lower limb, there's so many specialisms available there. So I thought perhaps I might be a surgeon because I didn't mind the gore and those sorts of things. I'd seen and done those sorts of things before.
Yeah.
But it turns out when I went to study, I had an aptitude for the biomechanics. It just went in my head in a way that didn't seem to for other people.
That's amazing. So not to ask a really dumb question, but were there a lot of similar injuries you saw when you were a medic in the army to, I guess, that kind of like tied over into podiatry?
Perhaps. I think there was a lot of musculoskeletal injuries because essentially the guys I was working with were semi-professional athletes. They were paid, so there's the professional bit, but they were pretty top end in terms of what they were pushing their body to do. So we saw quite a lot of some of the conditions you might not normally see until someone's 40 or 50 or 60 sort of occurring in 21-year-olds because they were pushing themselves quite hard. But equally we saw lots of things like ankle sprains and lost toenails and things like that. So I learned ankle strapping and blister prevention and those sorts of things pretty early on. And I'm still operating in the Army Reserve. So what used to be the TA, but now the Army Reserve. So I'm a physical training instructor. I'm still a medic officially, but I basically take them for their PT. And we do a lot of foot care lessons for them, a lot of ankle strapping lessons, a lot of how to prevent blisters and things like that as part of it. So we've got to make them march with heavy weights and stuff like that. So I get to break them and fix them.
That's amazing. Not everybody can say that. That's so cool. So I just wanted to go back on to a point that you'd mentioned earlier. So you went to go speak to a career advisor. Would you? So for anybody that is going into podiatry as their second career, is that something you recommend to go speak to them, or would you just say, go straight into podiatry?
Well, I think I would probably say more go and have a placement with podiatry. So I went with the Ipswich PCT because I was posted to Colchester, and that was the closest one. So I just emailed the department, and they gave me 1 day and 3 different placements. So I had a general chiropody as it was at the time, but general podiatry placement, a surgical placement, and a musculoskeletal. So they sort of gave me a grand whistle-stop tour of the sorts of things that a podiatrist does. So I would definitely say, go into it with your eyes open. So, my advice for anyone thinking to join the army is basically don't just join the army, pick a job you want to do in the army. So rather than just, because the intuition is the army is all the same, and there's lots of different career roles and jobs there, the same as there are in podiatry. And I think that's a very attractive thing about podiatry. You can work in multidisciplinary teams, you can be a standalone practitioner, you can specialize in dermatology, really have a knack for nail surgery, or get more into the business side of it. And there's also all sorts of different things that you can do with that qualification.
Yeah, that's so true. I think that would be appealing for a lot of people. Just the fact that within a specialist field, because podiatry is quite niche, you can still specialize into further things. So I think that's quite interesting. Would you say that there are a lot of, I guess, life lessons you learned with the army that you kind of bring into podiatry?
I think it certainly, when I was studying, I think it gave me more confidence than I would have had if I'd have just gone straight into the training. And that's partly because I was dyslexic and had special needs and things like that going through school. I probably wouldn't have had the confidence if I didn't have the life experience first for then going and doing a more in-depth academic study. But in terms of life lessons, I think really discipline, and I don't mean the army discipline, I mean just the understanding that sometimes a job just needs doing. There's no point complaining about it. There's no point.
Just crack on.
You just have to a phrase I like use, you have to choose the thing you're doing. So you can't, we can't choose to be in lockdown. So this is recorded at a time when we're all in lockdown for COVID. So you you can't make a choice about that. So there's no point complaining about it. You've got to just make the most of that choice that's thrust upon you. So don't see it as a choice. It's, you've got to choose to accept that. So that's probably quite a good life lesson from it. Although I did have an interesting conversation with the anatomy and physiology lecturer in the first year, because the very first assignment I put in, I only put about 3 references in it. She was sort of saying, well, where are all your references? And I was sort of saying, well, I referenced all the bits I had to research. Everything else I already knew, because I'd already done the medical training, and you didn't have to put references in at that point. It was answer the questions. So I was kind of coming at it from the point of saying, well, I knew those bits, and then the bits I had to go and find out, I put the reference in.
Okay.
I didn't understand that you had to secondarily prove that somebody else knew it first. So it's kind of a copy out in your own words exercise rather than a what you know words exercise. So that was a
it was a bit of a newsflash for me as well with referencing, because I'm not particularly good at referencing, and it wasn't until I hit university. I mean, they did teach me how to reference properly in high school, but with high school I never really paid attention. And it wasn't until university where you have to buckle down in university. Like it's not really a joke. And that's when proper referencing, it was kind of like brought to my attention. They're like, okay, if you don't reference properly, it's called plagiarism, and you can actually get done for that. And I was like, oh, okay, gotcha. I'm gonna reference properly.
The assumption is it's plagiarism, not knowledge, don't they? Because the assumption is that the knowledge has to come from somewhere. So yeah.
That's interesting. You mentioned, if you're comfortable talking about this, but you mentioned you had dyslexia. Did you always have dyslexia, or were you diagnosed a little bit later?
Definitely diagnosed later. At school, It was just, I was in the porter cabin with the other special needs kids, and I wasn't allowed to do a second language or PE at school or anything like that. I had to do extra English, just look, cover, repeat, those sorts of things. And if you saw my handwriting now, you'd never believe how long I spent practicing letters.
Oh my gosh.
I think dyslexia is probably a much more widely used diagnosis now. So it covers a lot of different things. So my young brother's also been told he has dyslexia, but his manifests very, very differently to mine.
So how would his manifest?
He's again, very bad handwriting, and he can't put across. So he was a school teacher actually, so he's actually quite good at standing up and presenting and those sorts of things. But mine sort of manifests as a very slow reading speed, and I kind of don't care how I write a word, as long as it kind of looks all right. I can't work out how to spell something I've never seen, and I can't read a word, and I don't know what that word says. If I haven't heard it.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
So I can't. So like pharmacology module was an absolute nightmare for me, because all the words look the same, and then trying to work out what they were saying. So mine, I think I had the reading speed of an 11-year-old apparently, but it was when I did all through school. That was kind of the experience. Extra classes for English. It wasn't really recognised as a thing. It was just, you're not academically good. So that's how I saw myself.
So that's really disheartening. How did you? I mean, if I feel like if I was in that position and somebody told me, you're not good enough, or you're not, essentially they're saying I'm dumb, that would really put me off. I wouldn't want to try doing anything in life. I mean, if I'm being shut down that early at an early age. So how did you push past that? I mean, that must have been quite difficult, I'm assuming. I don't know.
I suppose you just carry on. I suppose, I don't know. I think I didn't really have a direction at that sort of age. I went on and did a more vocational A-level, so I did a BTEC in combined sciences, where I discovered I was actually quite good at physics, whereas I thought I was good at chemistry. And it was so as long as you haven't got to plug the maths in, I can do physics. It's but I kind of describe biomechanics a bit like maths. So you can learn the answers to maths, or you just understand maths, and neither is right or wrong. But some people it's more intuitive, some people it seems to be more of a process. and both are applicable. But so when I went to the army, they basically didn't recognise it either. Certainly my sergeant in basic training said I was dyslexic rather than dyslexic. So those sorts of things carried on. But I found that it was a good environment for me. I could physically do everything they asked me to do, and I could pass every test they put me in front of. And that's how I ended up working with the elite forces, because I just kept passing tests and things. So it's not intended to sound arrogant. It's just that's what happened. So you know, I did. A lot of people did. You know, would take 4 or 5 attempts to pass the parachute selection, which was basically 3 months of 3 physical exercises a day in Brecon, so across the hills and well, mountains for Norfolk, around there. So I live in Norfolk. So and I turned up and passed that first time with no injuries, whereas most people have to do that 2 or 3 times. So that's just that my physiology and biology allow that, rather than you know, I'm built for putting a pack on my back and running up and down hills, it seems, rather than sprinting very fast. And I have some biomechanical theories about